What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Quadcast, the show where we get real, get raw, and get loud about mental health, substance use, and the fight to take our lives back.
Each episode, we're cutting through the stigma, dropping knowledge, sharing stories, and bringing the heat with guests who have lived it and aren't afraid to talk about it.
So turn it up, lock in, and let's break barriers, spark change, and build a community that refuses to stay silent. You're tuned into the Quadcast, and let's get into it.
You can find us on Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, or email us. The Quadcast is always looking for new guests, whether you're individuals that have experienced it, you're in law enforcement, treatment programs, nurses, doctors, or anyone that just has something to say. Come share your story with us on mental health or substance abuse.
Warning, there's cussing in this video. If you don't like swear words, well, you're
watching the wrong damn show.
Absolutely. And, I've never been super deep on the spirit, the religion side of things myself. Not that I don't believe, because I do.
Yeah.
I never grew up in church. I never grew up in a religious family. And, but, after my shooting back in 2017 and coming out on the other end of it, being in the place that I am and doing some of the things that I've done, I just sit back, and my main saying is everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
And you won't know what that reason is, and you'll always question it. But as long as you know there's a reason and push yourself to explore the rest of life past what you have been, to look for that reason, it doesn't matter what the actual reason is.
It's very true. Very true. Just like what we're doing right now, me just talking about stuff, I feel like, that's why I'm still here, is to, even if this helps one person, I feel like that's a success to me,
And my mom, every time I tell her I have an idea, she's like, "Oh God, here we go again." And she told me that exact same thing the other day. Even if it just helps one person, it was worth it. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I never dreamed to see myself on, hosting a podcast or being, pushing the mental health or substance use side of things, because of just how dark of a place that I was in after my accident, and my spot in law enforcement, dealing with drugs and individuals on using drugs. Like, my outlook on drugs is different than a lot of people's. But this is something that I want to understand it more, which is a big reason as to why I started doing this, because I would like to understand what other people view it as and what leads into it, more from a psychology side of things, more so than, an awareness side. But just putting the information out there and help, going through the things with people is huge in somebody else's eyes that may be experiencing the same problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, looking back, like from when I first started using drugs, even at 15, up until really just the last few years, there was just this huge stigma around it that, like I said earlier, drug addicts were these people on the street corners, or, whatever that case may be, kind of stereotype, but it doesn't discriminate. And I'm just glad that people like you and, it's becoming more, there's more awareness to it now, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, for instance, naloxone, Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, think that that's just enabling people, but I'm thankful for it, because had it not been for it, I probably wouldn't be here today to tell y'all about it, And
there was a point in time that I would have sat here and argued with you that it was enabling.
Yeah.
But, you know, your account with it and seeing where you are now, and, you know, there are people that use it for the wrong reasons, but
Yes.
that comes with anything. There are people that use guns for the wrong reasons. There's people
Absolutely.
that use the internet for wrong reasons. You know what I mean? So, you know, if you're one of those people, then okay, that stigma does fit. But if you're not one of those people, you shouldn't not have access to it, because it gave you a second, third, fourth chance at it, however you want to look at it. It
Yeah.
gave you that last chance that you needed to push yourself to actually seek treatment.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you never know where your rock bottom is. I thought I had hit rock bottom several times in the past, but this time, like, it was definitely people always say you're not going to change till you hit your rock bottom. Well, I had definitely hit the lowest point, in my life, and people had pushed me to try to, you know, get clean and, family, my wife, kids, because my son's too young to understand it right now, but my daughter, she's seen me through it all.
Sure.
And I've been very open with her about it. I don't hide anything. And, done lost my train of thought.
Yeah, you're fine, buddy.
Yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that.
Yeah, you're okay. Yeah, you were just saying that your daughter had seen it all. You don't hide anything from her.
Yeah, and just, bringing awareness, I guess. Just I try to be open with her, and because,
And you
they
mentioned,
say these problems are passed down, genetically. My
sure,
kids, she could have whatever, you know, to make her go down the same path. But that's why I just try to be honest with her about it, and, you know, to give her the guidance that she needs that I didn't have when I was her age, to not do the same things. I mean, I, like I say, I was young and she's 16. When I was her age, I had no supervision. I did what I wanted to. Try to keep an eye on stuff like that with her, and just, I think just what she's seen me go through is gives her the drive to not ever want to go through that. At least I hope so, because I don't wish it on anybody. Addiction is just a monster. Like, it consumes your life, your mind. That's all you care about. You'll put your family to the side. You'll put your kids to the side, whatever your situation is, just to make sure that you're not dope sick. And
right.
you'll go to pretty much any means necessary. And it's a horrible thing, man. And I don't wish it on anybody. And, if it wasn't for me finding God and getting saved and baptized, and, really, there's things, obviously, we're not perfect. Even when you get saved, it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. That just means that, you need to push to do the right thing, and admit your faults when you fall short, and try to do better. I still, there's things that, you know, like when I went down to Florida, I quit because I vaped. I quit vaping and everything,
Mm,
and once I got back home and got the job I have now, there's a lot of stress sometimes. I'm a foreman for a pipeline company, and I'm responsible for a crew and to make sure that things get done right and make sure everybody goes home safe. And there's a lot of stuff even after work hours I have to deal with that can be stressful at times, such as, my reports or anything. But I started vaping again, knowing that it's not the right thing. It's probably not, it's not healthy for me, but
no, but
it's something I still fight. And, it's still, I guess I justify it as it's better than me doing drugs. And that's, I want to quit it, but it's something I'm working on. So, yeah.
man, I have no doubt that you can. if you can put your mind to it, you can do it for sure. Because
Yeah.
with the story that you've just laid out, you can probably just about do anything at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long road, and you know, you don't definitely be proud of who you are now and where you came from because that every piece of that story led you to where you are.
Absolutely. It's still, like I say, it's coming up on a year, and it's hard to believe where I was this time a year ago. I remember contemplating suicide several times just as a way out. I thought there was no other way out. And
And what changed your mind?
my kids, I didn't, I love my kids, even though I kind of put them to the side a lot of times, I still obviously love my kids and my wife. I have a great wife. I mean, there's not many women that would deal with the stuff that I put her through, between cheating and running around and the drugs and bringing that stuff around the house and in the house and just, not paying bills on time, just being when I didn't have the drugs, I was a horrible person, man. I'd scream and cuss and thought she was always the problem, because she was trying to tell me something that I really needed to hear and needed to do, but it just wasn't on my agenda at the time.
Right. You
And
had a one track mind.
yeah, for sure. It's definitely like you get tunnel vision, like the only way for you, when you're going through that is, the only way you feel to deal with it and get through and deal with everyday life is just to keep getting high. It's just you're a slave to it. I mean, it can consumes your mind, body, and soul.
It's crazy. It's crazy the things we resort to due to stress, trauma, and whatever else that affects you. And it, it's crazy that it has to be such a drastic state of unhealthy blackness
Yeah,
that
and
the world is so stressful, so challenging that people have to turn to that, and it shouldn't have to be that way.
no, absolutely not. So, are there any other questions that you want to ask? I know I've kind of rambled on for
No,
a little over
honestly,
an
I
hour now.
mean, you've answered most of. I mean, within your whole story, you've answered a lot of them. What misconceptions about addiction do you wish people understood better?
Well, for one, like I've said several times now, like it just doesn't discriminate. A lot of people have a stigma that drug addicts are, these horrible people. And honestly, a lot of the people that I've met over the years are really good people. They've just went through some stuff and went about dealing with it the wrong way. And, there's other ways to deal with things, like, so yeah, that'd probably be the biggest thing, I guess.
Okay. Uh, let's see here. Trying to go through the questions that you haven't already answered.
I will say that, like, having a strong support system, if you're trying to get clean and, get right and live life like we should, without using drugs to deal with things, find somebody you can talk to,
Hmm.
you know, be open and honest. Like, if you come to, when you get to that point that you're ready, you just be honest with your family or whoever you have, like my wife's family, especially, has been a huge, huge, like, supporter of me. They knew that I had a problem. It, they didn't treat me any differently because of it. They just hoped and prayed that I would eventually, change. And, they still to this day, they're my biggest support system. We have a family prayer text group chat that I send out Bible verses every morning to everyone in the family. At 7 o'clock every evening, we all get together and, everybody kind of texts something and says a prayer or whatever. And just accountability, like, you got to have someone that's, if they see you falling back into your old habits, because there's always like precursors to you really going back out and doing drugs again. Like, you might start just missing family functions or not answering the phone, or whatever it may be. Like, you need someone in your life to hold you accountable to that. Be like, dude, you look like you're slacking, what's going on? Talk about it. And that's a huge thing for me. Like, when I first come home, uh, I was offered the job I have now, and I actually turned it down the first time. I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't be on the road traveling. I have to be home every night. I need accountability right now. I need someone to keep an eye on me.
Right.
And, my superintendent, who actually offered me this job, I've worked around him in the pipeline industry since 2017, and he's seen me then and he's seen me now, and he holds me accountable. Like, he's like, dude, if I don't get my reports in on time or whatever, if I'm a few minutes later and I should be, he's like, what's going on? Why are you not getting your stuff in?
Right. And that's good though, because, accountability is huge in anything that we do or our lifestyles. But in the blue collar world, you could say, I mean, substance use on average is higher than most of the industries out there.
Yes, absolutely.
And to have a supervisor that is mindful of that towards you is that accountability for you, and I would assume probably all the other guys under him as well.
Absolutely. And like, he has experience with it too. He was in prison. This was before we met, but he used to sell drugs and had a drug problem. And,
Okay.
so he's really aware of the signs, I guess.
Hmm.
And, when, because he had been trying to get a hold of me, I guess, while I was in Florida, and he was like, man, I was kind of worried about you. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, I didn't know if you died or what. And I told him what was going on. And, that, he told me, because I finally ended up taking the job. I held out for a couple weeks, and I was like, man, if you can make sure I'm home every night for now, at least for a while, while I get reacclimated to not being in a controlled environment, to, being in an uncontrolled environment, basically.
Right.
I was like, I'll take the job. And he ended up calling back a couple weeks later. He was like, you might have to drive some, but you can be home every night. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. And I just remember thinking, I was grateful, because I didn't think that, I thought I had burnt all my bridges in the past, in this line of work. And I remember messaging him and telling him, how much I appreciate it, and I ain't gonna let him down. And, he was like, man, I understand. He was like, I feel sure that you've changed. And he was like, in my sobriety, he said some of the greatest times in my sobriety was when people realized my worth and that I wanted a change, and they gave me a shot. And he said that, that's what I want to do. He said, I just want to give you a shot. He said, don't screw it up.
And I think so that that's a big topic right now in some of the conversations that I've had in the past couple weeks, and that's rehabilitation, whether that's, you know, something from your standpoint or somebody coming, a felon coming out of prison for not drug charges. Let's just say it's a different type of felony. Um, rehabilitation back into being a contributing member of society. I don't think we as a population actually sit back and look to see how beneficial that is, because if we don't rehabilitate to come back into normal society, then where does that leave that person and where does that leave everybody else? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And, you know, in the blue collar work, especially in the pipeline, and, I know it's probably bad to say, but we've always said, and, in the pipeline industry, the more felonies and DUIs you have, the better off you are to get hired, or better chance you have to get hired.
I
And, um,
mean, that's one
I
heck of a
feel
way to
like,
look at it, but I
yeah,
can't disagree with you because, just from my little bit of knowledge of, the pipeline industry, that seems to be a going thing.
yeah. And, there's some people that, get that job, and it can be a life changer for them if went about the right way.
Sure.
And I could see where there's probably difficulties with other styles of jobs, such as, an office job or food service, customer service, whatever it may be, where it's probably not the same. And I would agree that, probably need to explore ways to acclimate people better, when coming back into society, especially, out of prison or whatever. That's a total. I've never been to prison.
Sure.
Should have many times, but I can see where that would definitely could be a culture shocker, and definitely needs to be some more training, and explore ways to get people back into regular society after that.
So, what misconceptions do you think people have about parents who struggle with addiction?
Well, you know, I would say that not every just because you're a parent and you've had a drug problem or whatever doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad parent. I mean, I'm sure that shoe may fit some cases, but a lot of the times it's, for me, a lot of people, if they knew everything that I put my kids through and my family, that they would say that I was just a horrible parent and didn't deserve to have any kids. But,
Sure.
um, just because someone's going through these things doesn't mean they're a bad person or a bad parent. I mean, they just need the right, for one, they've got to have a drive to be a better parent. Even even in my active addiction, obviously I was still around my kids. I still love my kids. Was I there like I should have been? Absolutely not. Um, and just they got to have that drive, but it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just they got to want it, for one. Nobody can make anyone do it. For one, they have to want it, I think. But everyone can change, if they really want to.
Sure. And that's one of the main things that we see on a day to day basis with this is so many people are just reoffending, 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 and that's because they have no accountability once they are out on the street again. They don't have that person to look after them. They don't have that person to. They won't listen to that person. They won't. They won't ground themselves to be able to remain on the right path. And people just see it as bad, bad, bad. But we all have the ability to be better if we want to be better. It's that that is a choice. I feel like,
Absolutely.
um, you know, a lot of people say drug addiction is a choice, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's so many aspects that you look at it from that you can't define it under one vocabulary word. Um, but choosing to do better and get clean, or you know, to be there for your kids, whatever, that's a choice.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Like if someone is in that situation and they've been trying to have the want to do better and just keep failing, just look for other options. Like if you've tried the same thing two or three times and it hasn't worked, look for something else. Like just keep exploring other options. I feel like for me, obviously what worked for me was just really finding God and growing a relationship with Him. That's what worked for me. That may not work for some people. That's what worked for me. Like once I really surrendered myself and wanted to live by His word the best way possible, like that's when, you know, like when I got baptized, man, I got baptized in Seminole, Alabama back in April, or yeah, April. And it's just a huge step for me. Like I just felt, I felt it when I got saved too. I just felt like this huge burden and just weight was off my shoulders. And when I got baptized, man, I remember so many different feelings going through me. Like just, I felt, like I said, just this huge weight lifted off of me. I knew there was still work I had to put in, but I knew that if I kept putting in the work, that God would lead me down the path I need to go if I just kept pushing towards Him and trying to grow closer to Him.
When did when you were in treatment down in Florida, did they push the spiritual religion side at all?
Absolutely. It was really, so they are, I say were, they are, they're still doing it. They've been doing it they started in 1993.
Okay.
It's very, very structured, towards religion. Like you have morning devotions every morning where you go through Bible verses, whatever the daily devotion is, and you talk about things and how it relates to our life as an addict or an alcoholic, whatever. And then you have church 2 times a week, and it's not your typical hour church service. It's 3 hour services on Thursdays and Sundays. And you have homework. You memorize Bible verses and how you can try to put that Bible verse to use in your life to better yourself and grow closer to God. Um, and it's just, so the main pastor there, like I say, he started it in 1993. He's got several kids. His youngest son is actually like an associate pastor, and there's always someone to talk to, there, and they really push. It's not, they're not like, oh, you got to get saved, or you got to do this or whatever. You're not going to make it, nothing like that. But they really push it that, because the pastor, Bishop Alex, he was actually a drug addict and alcoholic, and he was in prison at 18 years old and
Wow.
got out, and he got saved and got married, and he said God just put this huge burden on him, to help others, get to where he was at. And I I didn't graduate the program. I left early. They wanted me to stay. They said, Chris, we really wish you would stay, but you'll always have a home here no matter what. They said, if you get back out there and you mess up, you call us and we'll get you right back down here. But I still talk to them. I met a lifelong friend down there, Jesse. He come down there and he was really bad on meth, and he's actually working on becoming a pastor, and
Really?
he's been there for going on 4 years now. He actually lives on campus, and
Mm-hmm.
he was a huge help with getting me through. Me and him could relate. He was a blue collar type of guy. He's a vet. He was in the
Okay.
Army, which I never was, but
Sure.
he just a really good guy, man. And I talk to him daily. They have a YouTube channel for their church services. I get those twice a week, and they check in on me, and they're just really good people down there, man. A lot of the people down there are not as fortunate as I am to have family that still cares for them, or a wife or kids, or whatever. And I knew that I needed to come back home. I mean, my wife was at home. She works, but I wasn't really making any income down there. We worked. They have a construction business, but
Right.
that program was free. I mean, 100% free. So I worked, and that kind of paid my way through.
Okay. I got you.
And I knew that I had to come home, and I knew that I wasn't going back to where I was. I knew that, life is so much better now without all that, just feeling like a slave to a substance. So I
Right.
did leave early, but I still have a good relationship with them. And, if anyone is ever interested in that, I'm sure could get them down there. It's a good program.
Yeah.
You know,
If you don't mind, whenever we end this, can you send me the name of that?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, send me the name of that when we get off here. Just I'll put it in the I'll put it in the show notes or under the title. That way it's posted out there. But what do you practice your religion, spiritual side here? Like, do you attend church? Like, how do you continue that journey
So
now that you're
yeah,
here?
I do. I found as soon as I came home, that was the very first thing I did. I think I got home on a Friday, and I knew that I had to stay involved in church. So
Hmm.
there's a church down here in Peterstown called the Appalachian Christian Center. They
Okay.
are a non-denominational church.
Right.
They actually help fund a rehab program over in Princeton called Appalachian Teen Challenge, I think. But it's not just for teenagers, it's for adults too. And they send a percentage of the monthly tithes that the church members give to that program to help support it.
Okay.
So I found them, and my son plays football, and he actually just finished this past weekend. They had their last playoff game, but
Nice.
up until the days that his football wasn't on there,
Uh-huh.
me and my son were there, every Sunday. And I haven't been there for a few weeks now, probably a month or better. I still do my own thing in the mornings, and I plan on going back and attending regularly next week, since football's over with now and shouldn't anything interfere with it. So,
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Quadcast.
Remember, breaking stigma doesn't stop when the episode ends. We're building a movement, and you're a part of it. Stay strong, stay aware, and stay connected.
And this is the Quadcast signing out.